All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy this show, be sure to hit that like and the subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. Okay, so let's just lay this out. Today is going to be a kind of a sensitive topic. I'm going to be showing you some things. So if you're a bit sensitive about, harm to others, then by all means, maybe tune out or just, listen so you don't have to view it or whatever's necessary. If you happen to have children, it may not be appropriate. There won't be any profanities necessarily. I'm not going to go talking crazy and, really illicit stuff, but the topic today is rather serious. So I just wanted to give that warning out to folks. All right. So what happened? Well, you might have already known that there was a woman who was literally burned alive on the F train in New York City. Burned alive. It was here's the story. Let me go ahead. Oops, that's not right. Let me pull this story up real quick. All right, so here we go. From the New York Post. Critics blast bystanders who stood by while illegal immigrant allegedly burned woman to death on New York City subway. They're calling this the Daniel Penny effect. All right, so what's going on here? What is all these ads? New Yorkers were up in arms on Monday, one day after an illegal immigrant, Guatemalan immigrant, allegedly burned a sleeping Straffinger to death aboard a Brooklyn subway train while bystanders did nothing. Horrifying video footage of the incident shows at least three gawkers, one of them seen filming the shocking fatal blaze on his phone, and an NYPD cop standing outside the subway car as flames engulfed the unidentified victim after the Sunday morning attack. Nobody came to her aid, said Guardian Angels founder and community activist Curtis Sliwa. There's no doubt that people don't want to get involved. It's the Daniel Penny factor. We're going to address this in a minute. It's frozen people. They're saying to themselves, I don't want to get jammed up like Penny. People should have been running over to the woman on fire. They did nothing. They said nothing, Sliwa said, calling the reluctance of bystanders to intervene the Daniel Penny effect. Penny, a 26-year-old ex-Marine, was charged with murder last year for fatally choking vagrant Jordan Neely after Neely aggressively confronted frightened passengers on a Manhattan subway car. Penny was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide charges earlier this month, but according to some observers, his legal ordeal is giving would-be subway apologies for that, giving would-be subway good Samaritans pause. Let's see here. Going down. People are reticent about getting in the middle of criminal activity. State Conservative Party Chairman Jared Kassar, a Brooklyn resident, told the Post Monday. There are a lot of New York City residents who think twice about acting because they don't think they have the support of our Democratic elected officials. They are wary of revolving door justice. This murder should have never happened in the first place, he said. Meanwhile, the head of the state Senate committee that oversees the MTA said Monday he wants answers from the transit agency over shortcomings exposed by the incident. We're asking for a breakdown of what happened, how it happened, and why it took so long to make an arrest. State Senator Leroy Comrie, who chairs the committee, told the Post Monday. There's a picture of the alleged murderer. Because of all the actions of previous administrations, it's a mess out there, Comrie said. There are too many mentally ill people who should be in facilities who are out in the streets. Some of these people need to be restricted in their movements. The lawmaker spoke one day after a migrant identified by federal immigration officials as 33-year-old Sebastian Zepeda Khalil was charged with the grisly incident on Coney Island subway train. Disturbing video captured a man identified as Zepeda Kali calmly sitting on a bench at the station while the woman burned. He left the scene, but cops caught up with him later when he stopped off a subway train at the 34th Street Herald Square station in Manhattan. Sources say charges are pending, with Brooklyn prosecutors awaiting the results of an autopsy, which is complicated by the scorched condition of the victim's body to determine the cause of death. But the incident has raised several questions, including why it took cops so long to get to the burning woman, why Khalil was allowed to leave the scene after cops arrived, and why required fire extinguishers on the subway car weren't put to use, sources said. One former state poll took aim at Governor Kathy Hochul, raising concerns over the state-run transit agency. We all witnessed the horrible tragedy on the F train. Former Brooklyn State Assemblyman David Hikind said on X, I feel like I really shouldn't be trying to read so early in the morning. I feel like it's all just tongue twisters. Anyway, I'm calling on Governor Hochul. I'm begging and pleading with you to resign now. The job is just beyond you. Unfortunately, in New York, there is no recall. Okay, that's a problem. Really? No recall in New York? So if you just elect somebody, they just get to keep on working, even if they're doing a bang up job. Wow. So I'm asking you to do the right thing. Hakind said, you took pictures the day before the tragedy telling New York how safe the subways were. How pathetic. You may mean well, but being governor is just not for you. Get out of the way. He's kind of got a point there. He really does. Like maybe you need to step down. Now, will she? No. Absolutely not. She's totally not going to. Let's see really quickly here. Before we get too deep into this, yes, that Liberty Lady says, Merry Christmas, Liberty Dad family and Liberty champions. Merry Christmas to all of you. And I promise you, I did not want to do this kind of an episode today, but as I was looking, over social media and at the news, and was like, what should I talk about? And I kind of wanted to do something more Christmassy, a little lighthearted. But honestly, this story bothers me. It really, really bothers me. So I was like, you know what? Maybe, maybe people need to hear this. Maybe instead of on Christmas Eve, maybe what people need is to hear about tragedy, because we get so involved in, oh my God, I got to buy presents. And, you know, is so and so going to like this gift? And, what am I going to get? Did Santa come? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe we need to step back and remember that we've got things in society that aren't right. And one woman, at least, will not be celebrating Christmas. Whether she would or not, I don't know if the person was homeless and had a family to go to. Regardless, she won't be around for Christmas. And a lot of people are talking about immigrants. They're like, oh, this immigrant. No, there's more to this story than just the immigrant. So I'm going to show you a video in light of all that. And again, this is going to be a graphic video. So this is the video of the woman burning, and I'm not showing it to you so that we can watch somebody burn, because I want you to see and hear what was happening at the time that this woman was burning, because we have footage of it. And this is what I do. I do commentary on politics and culture. Well, this is that part of the culture, and we need to face it. So let's play this video real quick. And again, it is graphic. I'm giving you plenty of warning. And if you do nothing else, just listen. So here you go. All right, I'm going to pause it here. Supposedly, the man now fanning this woman is the migrant who set her on fire. Supposedly, that's like, and what? There's a guy right here in front of the camera, just standing there. There's a guy just to his left we saw an officer walk by, barely walking fast, barely walking fast. You can kind of see an officer there, still walking by, just like, I think that was the end of the video. Yeah, that's the end of that video. So the officer just walks by almost casually, as if somebody said, "Hey, man, there's, you know, somebody tripped. Can you come and help pick up their stuff?" And that's what. But people are worried about the immigrant. Nobody's worried about the Americans who did nothing. They didn't help the woman at all. No, yeah, like the best you can hear is some guy in the background yelling, oh no," and some profanities. But you don't hear anybody saying, "Hey, somebody get some water, get a blanket, call 911." None of that. And people aren't calling 911 because they're too busy taking videos. They're so busy taking videos, they can't even call 911 and say, "Hey, you need to get anybody down here." Nobody's rushing over, grabbing their coat and throwing it over the woman, trying to pat her out. Nothing. But people are worried about the immigrants. That's what Americans are worried about. Well, great. You can worry about immigrants all you want. They're still here. And when those immigrants do something, the very few immigrants that are terrible like this, which there are some, when they do something terrible, you can be proud and know that your fellow Americans will do jack squat. So there you go. Be proud, America. That's who you are. You watch a woman burn to death, and then you want to blame it on immigrants. Great. Now, Governor Hochul was taken to task for this because of some photos that she took. So here's what she showed. This is what she put out on Instagram. I think this was the day before this happened. She said, "In March, I took action to make our subways safer for the millions of people who take the trains every day, each day. Since deploying the National Guard to support NYPD and MTA safety efforts and adding cameras to all subway cars, crime is going down and ridership is going up." Honestly, let's look at this absent the fire. Let's just think about this for a second. I want you to just think about what she wrote. Just set aside the fact that somebody was burned to death, and I think there were some other murders that happened as well elsewhere. But set aside the fact that somebody was burned to death. Let's just go to this particular day, which she posted this, which I believe was the day prior. She said, "Since deploying the National Guard to support NYPD, they had the National Guard." Now, I was in the National Guard. And we understood that if we got called to help fellow Americans, it was because there was like a natural disaster or something like, a hurricane ripped through a city, or, there was a huge hurricane, tornado, or hurricane, snowstorm, earthquake, some sort of major wildfire, something serious. It wasn't like, "Hey, we've got so much crime that we got to call in the National Guard to help deal with it." And that's what she was boasting about. She's boasting about crime being so bad that you have to call in the National Guard in some way to assist. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. And she should have never been able, like, she should have been ripped to shreds that the very moment that it was posted. People should have laid into her and said, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy? That's not to boast about. Crime is going down." Okay, well, if you've had one less murder than you had last month, yeah, crime went down. How impressive. So what does that even mean, crime went down? It clearly didn't go down that much. It didn't go down to the point where somebody thought, it's really a bad idea for me to set somebody else on fire and then go fan them. Like, I'll just sit here, watch them burn, and then go fan them. This is insane. People made a meme out of her. So here's a picture here, and you can see what they did was they photoshopped the burning woman in to illustrate the point. Now, as a rule of thumb, I would generally oppose these kind of things, but honestly, I think this is one of those use cases where it is absolutely necessary to illustrate the point and say, look, here you are, you're talking to your National Guard members, and you've got somebody burning in the background. Now, that didn't really happen, right? This is a meme, but it's to illustrate the point that she really didn't do anything. But then I think even further, it kind of shows us, like, just think about this for a second. The National Guard, people in military uniform are supposedly, I guess they're patrolling the subway or they're in some way assisting, but they're down there. That's insane. Like, she should be removed from office. She won't be because apparently they have no recall. So first they got to figure out, okay, why is it that we live in a state where we can't even recall a governor if they're doing such a terrible job? That should never be off the table. It should always be on the table. That even Gavin Newsom faced a recall. He won, but at least they had one. Even California has a process for recall. Again, he won, so take that for whatever it is, but they have one. This isn't, people are saying like, you know, I saw people saying like this is a canary, in the coal mine, talking about like, you hear it a lot, like people use that phrase a lot, but I've heard it, mostly toward the immigrants because people are like, oh, well, it's the immigrant that set her on fire. And I'm like, yes, the immigrant set her on fire. And that does represent one problem. The bigger problem, I think, is that nobody did anything to help. And that's what people want to focus on. They want to focus on the immigrant. Like, well, if he wouldn't have set her on fire, nobody would have needed to not help. Yes, but it would be nice if you happen to be in trouble. What if the woman had caught fire by some other means? What if, I don't know, she was playing with her lighter and then dropped it and then caught on fire? Whatever. I don't know. What if a spark from somewhere, she was sitting close to something and it sparked and it caught her clothes on fire? Okay, we might still have the same problem. Americans not helping. Because a lot of those Americans that probably, like, I would imagine that many of the bystanders there did not know she was set on fire by somebody. That's my guess. I don't know that. I haven't interviewed them. I haven't seen any stories where people interviewed the bystanders and said, "Why did you not do anything?" But I suspect that some of them, at least, had no clue. So as far as they keep calling this the Daniel Penny effect. In what way is it the Daniel Penny effect where somebody won't say, hey, there is a person literally burning to death? I'll just stand here in video. That's not the Daniel Penny effect. It only is the Daniel Penny effect if people know that it was done intentionally and the man was still there. That's the only way that you could claim it. But otherwise, you have a bigger problem, New York. And I think this represents a problem in the United States overall. Now, there was at least 3 people and 1 officer who did absolutely nothing. You might think, well, shouldn't the officer do something? And you might like to think so. But let me point this out to you. So I saw this. So here's a photo of the woman burning from the quartering, and they said, "Always remember, you are on your own. Police have no duty to help you." This picture is rough, but the reminder is just as important. For those wondering, yes, the picture is real, and this woman was still alive at this point. So here's this officer walking by. You can see that he's walking. He's not even running. It's not like he's running to go grab help. Maybe, like you might be able to say, okay, he's running to grab some help because he didn't have a blanket or he did whatever, but he's not running. So he's no sense of urgency. A woman is burning to death. I just I'm almost at a loss for words here because I can't imagine what kind of horrible person would just let that happen and do nothing. So here's a follow up to the quarterings comment. And so this comes from the Liberty Doll, a good person, by the way. So if you're on social media, I encourage you to follow the Liberty Doll. She says, no duty to protect, no duty to help. So she follows it up and she points out that in 1981, Warren v. District of Columbia, then again in 1989, DeShaney v. Winnebago County Department of Social Service, and then again in 2005, Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, they all came to the same conclusion that officers have no duty to help you. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means the way that it works, if an officer comes to grab me, like maybe I'm a suspect, and the officer comes and grabs me and they put me in the patrol car, at that point, since they are detaining me, they have an obligation to protect me, but only because they're detaining me. That's it. Now, will they get into much trouble? Well, it depends on what happens, right? Like there's still a lot of flexibility for them to make mistakes, if you will. Um, but if an officer's walking by and they see something happening and they don't save you, they cannot be held liable for not trying to help. They can't at all. Like they might be held liable for not reporting a crime or, for certain other things. And there may be some, policy procedures that they can get in slight trouble for, but you, the citizen, have no constitutional um guarantee for your safety by officers. There could be 50 officers and you could be drowning. And then if you drown, they will not be held liable because they do not have a duty to protect you. They just don't. And so therefore you get officers that just walk on by. I mean, he might have been walking at a fast pace, but I'm telling you right now, if I see somebody burning, I'm running wherever it is I'm running to, right? Running to grab a phone, a blanket, a cup of water, something. I'm moving with some haste because it's the right thing to do. Now, this Daniel Penny effect, I actually disagree for reasons that I stated again prior. Like I think that a lot of people weren't very familiar with the actual circumstances of this particular situation. I don't think that a lot of people really knew. Like there might have been some, like some people might have been on the subway or whatever, but several of the people certainly, I assume, and I'm making an assumption here. I'm making an assumption that not everybody saw this person, this man, light the woman on fire. Now, I could be wrong, and honestly, I hope I'm not, but whatever. Like it's terrible no matter which way you look at it. If you knew about it and you did nothing, if you knew that it was done on purpose and you did nothing, and if you didn't know that it was done on purpose and you did nothing, either way, you did nothing. So I don't think, it's kind of like that distinction without difference. I think that's where we kind of land at this point. So let's take a look at something here. This comes from Grok. You may or may not be familiar with this concept, but I don't know if you've ever heard of something called the bystander effect. It's actually a literal thing. This preceded Daniel Penny. So let's take a look here. So the bystander effect, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can read it. So it says the bystander effect. So I just asked Grok, I said, hey, describe the bystander effect using less than 300 words. The bystander effect is a social psychology concept where individuals are less likely to offer help during an emergency when others are present. This was notably observed in the case of Kitty Genovese's murder in 1964, where many people reportedly did not intervene or call for help. So in that particular case, and this was also, I believe, in New York, Kitty Genovese was brutally murdered in an alley, I believe. And at the time, it was reported by the New York Times that like 38 people watched it and didn't even call. Now, it turns out that it wasn't 38 people, it was far fewer. Some people just heard screams. They didn't really know what was going on. So there's various things going on there. So it wasn't exactly that 38 people saw it. But out of that sprung this idea of this bystander effect. So the key factors include diffusion of responsibility. The presence of others makes each person feel less personally responsible. In other words, like, hey, they'll probably get to it. Somebody else will probably do it. So we're always thinking like somebody else is going to do this. Somebody else will, but we can't. We have to assume that nobody else is helping unless we actually see somebody else helping. Social influence. Bystanders look to others' reactions to gauge the severity of the situation, often leading to inaction if no one else acts. That's that's crazy. I mean, it may be true, but it's so crazy. I mean, think about this for a second. Imagine that you're watching a woman burn, literally burn to death, and people are like, "Well, I guess it's not that big of a deal because other people aren't helping." That's like something's wrong with our humanity. Pluralistic ignorance. If no one is helping, individuals might assume there's no real emergency. Kind of follows that last one. Fear of embarrassment. Concern about doing the wrong thing or facing judgment can deter action. So this is where the Daniel Penny effect comes into play. Evaluation apprehension. Worry about how one's actions will be perceived by the group. Okay. So you're more worried that people may like not they may be upset with you for how you did it or what you did than just saying, "Hey, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to help." Now, this isn't really a new concept because we've actually had to have good Samaritan laws because there were instances in our society where people would go and try to help, and maybe somebody was choking and they tried to do the Heimlich maneuver. They did it wrong. They broke somebody's rib. The person ended up, living, and then they sued the person for breaking their rib and say, "Hey, you intervened." These kind of things, what we need to do as a society is say, no, if the person, if we can determine that the person earnestly tried to help, even out of ignorance, and did entirely the wrong thing, if they tried to help, we should want that out of a society. We should absolutely want that. And let me see, you know what? I think I made a mistake here. Don't get me wrong. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say. I made a mistake and I didn't get all the video that I wanted. Did I? No. Let me get did I get the video? Let me, yes, let me add a video in here because, people are talking about this Daniel Penny effect. And I want to show you, let's see here. Let's do this video. Let's do this. Give me just a second here. We will get this video up. I apologize. I thought I had everything all set up, but I forgot. So we will get this put up on the screen here. Let's see here.
I mean, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't really.
All right, let me pause that for just a second. We'll start it over. Let me make this full size so that you can see. So this is Daniel Penny in his interview after his trial. After his trial. Okay.
I'm not a confrontational person. I don't really extend myself. I think this type of thing is very uncomfortable. All this attention and limelight is very uncomfortable. And I would prefer without it. I didn't want any type of attention or praise, and I still don't. Mm-hmm. The guilt I would have felt if someone did get hurt, if he did do what he was threatening to do, would never be able to live with myself. And I'll take 1 million court appearances and people calling me names and people hating me just to keep one of those people from getting hurt or killed.
Okay. So that's what he said after his trial. Now I'm just going to read it to you before his trial. Before his trial, he was interviewed and Penny, and I'm quoting from an article. It goes, Penny went on to say that he felt no shame. When asked if he would do it again, he nodded and said, "I would, if there was a threat and danger in the present." So before his trial, Daniel Penny said, "I would do it again. It's the right thing to do." After his trial, he said, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't do something. It's the right thing to do. So in a way, I think the Daniel Penny effect, while it is real, while people see that and say, man, I don't know that I want my life upended like that. I don't know if I'm willing to, if I have the wherewithal to deal with that kind of, you know, legal battle for doing the right thing. But on the other hand, I look at it and I say, if you're looking at Penny as the example, then why are you not looking at him as the example? He just showed you, yes, do the right thing, stand tall, do the right thing, and hold your ground. Say, I did the right thing. I would do it again. He said it before his trial. He said it after the trial. So when people use Daniel Penny, I think they're selectively using the part that excuses them from doing the right thing. I don't think most people are really actually, looking at the Daniel Penny case and saying, man, that's a lot that he went through. I don't know if I could really do that. I don't think that's actually what's happening. I think what's happening is that there's a lot of Americans out there that wouldn't do anything. And then they go, well, look at Penny. Yeah, look at Penny. Look at how tall he stood despite all of that before and after. Why the hell aren't you using that as your motivation? Why are you allowing the worst part to be your motivation? When you tell me that you wouldn't do something because look at Daniel Penny, what you're telling me is that you can live with the harm that comes to somebody else that you might have prevented just so you don't get in trouble with the government. Now, I'm not saying that every time there's an incident, you should rush into danger. Not what I'm saying at all. There is a time and a place to do things. There is a right way and a wrong way. I have personally faced down kitchen fires, big ones. When I was a kid, our kitchen got fire and it burnt up the whole kitchen. Like it was huge. It was a massive one. And I can tell you from personal experience that fires, like they tell you that fire like engulfs quickly. Like you until you experience it, like I don't think you realize just how fast fire moves. It's absolutely insane. So I've had that experience of fire. I've also, in many instances, I don't want to say many, multiple instances, I've stepped in to defend others. In fact, what episode? This is episode 430. So in episode 321, it's titled "Afterthoughts of an Almost Fight with Maj Touré." Now, I poorly worded that, as some point people pointed out. They're like, "Dude, you almost got in a fight with Maj Touré." No, that's just my poor wording on the title. What actually happened was there was an altercation at a park, the local park from my house, 1 mile away, where a man was screaming and berating at a woman. And I just kind of sat there and watched and observed. He was just yelling and she seemed calm and chill. And there was no, but then eventually I did intervene. I stepped in and I was like, dude, and the way that I did it wasn't necessarily the best. So what I did was, number one, I intervened. I got in between him and the woman once I said, "Hey, we're enough is enough. We need to deal with this." Right? And the man was bigger than me, outweighed me, all that good stuff. He had been drinking. I came home and I showed my wife all the spit all over my glasses because that's how close he was. Um, and I had called the police at one point. Right? It was a pretty intense, little match, a little arguing match. It didn't turn out violent. That was good. Um, so then I was like, hey, I reached out to Maj and I was like, hey man, any chance you want to come on my show and I'll tell you the story and then you can tell me what I did wrong. And he was like, absolutely. So he joined me. And what we did was we talked about the right way to deal with the situation and the wrong way, the things that I did wrong. Because what we didn't discuss was DL, you should never ever intervene. That's not what we discussed. Now, there are times where it's not appropriate for you to intervene, and that's a judgment call. And if you make a judgment and you say, look, at the time, I didn't know how to put out a burning fire on somebody, and I didn't want it to get worse. I didn't know if I should throw water on her, if I should fan her, if I should put a blanket on her. So what I did was I found a phone and I called police. I went running out of the subway. I was grabbing police. Like if that's you, good. Good for you. Like not everybody will know the right thing to do in every situation. But you should always know, go find somebody. Scream and yell, "Hey, a woman's on fire. Somebody come help." Right? "Hey, there's a fight here. This guy's beating up a woman. Somebody come help." Right? Like there are any number of things that you can do that don't necessarily make you getting directly involved. And so that was the point of my show, is to say like, okay, you know, what is the proper way to handle? And Maj actually had some really great thoughts on the matter. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a great takeaway. And I hope other people that watched it have that takeaway and say, okay, if I'm in a situation like this, here's what I should do. Here's what I should not do. Because there's always those two things. There's the things you should do, and there's the things that you should not do. And what you should not do is just sit there and video record somebody and let it happen. You should at least be 911 should be practically overwhelmed. Like virtually everybody, I've got a phone right here. Lots of people, like most everybody has a phone with them at all times. 911 should have been blasted. Hey, there's a woman on fire. What do I do? Right? Then again, in 304, episode 304, I that was titled "Neutered Masculinity and the Answer" with Karen Ann Harlos. Now I know that there's some drama going on in the party, but that's not what we're talking about today. At the time, Karen Ann Harlos had posted about she was on a subway or a train, and there was an intimidating character on the train, a character intimidating other passengers. And she said not a single man stood up. And it was interesting because she made this post, and then I came in and I said something like, spineless cowards, all of them, or something like that. And man, I was flooded with dudes like, dude, I'm not ruining my life to help somebody else. Oh, okay. You know what that means? That means that somebody else is not going to ruin their life to help you when you need it. The reason that I stepped in when I was at the park with my son was because I looked at the situation. I said, this man's yelling at a woman. Now, just because a man's yelling at a woman doesn't necessarily mean you should always jump in. But, again, this is a judgment call. You make a determination. So I made a judgment call from the moment it started that I was going to sit where I was and observe the situation very closely and be prepared to jump in if the worst happened. So I had made a judgment call and said, I'm not going to intervene just yet. We're going to see where this goes. If it gets a little too out of hand or, whatever. Right. And so I was making a judgment call, but I didn't just not do anything. And then eventually I stepped in. And the reason that I stepped in is because I'm not always with my wife and my son. And if my wife and my son are in danger, I would want another man to step in and try to help them. And I firmly believe what has that saying go? What comes around goes around. Like what you do, you can kind of expect to get back. So if I'm unwilling to step in and help somebody else, then I should understand that somebody else would be unwilling to step in and help me. And that includes my wife and my son. And that is an unacceptable society that I want. I don't want to live in that kind of a society. I want a society where, hey, people will say, I'll help you. Well, let me jump in. Or I'll make a phone call. I'll go grab some help, but not I'll just stand there and watch somebody burn. That's unacceptable. We have a huge problem in this society, and it's not new. So people can call it the Daniel Penny effect, but it's actually not new. Now, there may be some realities that we have to try to figure out. It may be that there's a psychological thing that is in place and that has always been in place. And as long as we're calling it the Daniel Penny effect, then we're not dealing with a potential psychological problem. If the problem really is that people, as the bystander effect says, they will judge the situation based on what other people are doing, which seems to me to be true, right? If that's the case, then we need to stop worrying so much about the Daniel Penny case and worry about, okay, how do we create a society where people are more willing to step in? What do we need to do? And maybe we go back to the Daniel Penny case and we say, instead of running him through the ringer like we did, maybe we make a statue of the man. Now, he probably wouldn't like that. And I'm not saying that that is the only way. What I'm just suggesting is that maybe one of the ways we break this psychology is to create an environment where people want to, where the want is more than just, and it's sad to say, more than just, hey, this person needs help, right? Or maybe we put out PSAs and we just start saying, like, look, if you're in a situation, here are some things that you can do. And maybe that's what we need. Maybe we just need PSAs all over the place that say, hey, if somebody broke an arm, here's how you do it. Here's how you fix it. You know, here's how you put a splint on it. Here's how you do a tourniquet. Maybe we just need small little PSAs everywhere so that people see it. So it's always, kind of like the pharmaceutical ads. Like I'm sure that if you're watching this show, if you're listening, I'm willing to bet that you could probably think of a pharmaceutical that you don't need that you heard about, right? Because we see them all the time. Ask your doctor if such and such drug is right for you. Be wary about all these crazy side effects that we're going to say very, very quickly. Right. But the point being, maybe that's what we need in society. We just need to say, hey, here's a PSA. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. Don't forget. Right. It was drilled into me when I was a kid, 911, call 911. Everybody knows 911. Why? Because it's drilled into you over and over and over. Well, what else was drilled into me was stop, drop, and roll. Now, some people have asked, why didn't the woman move? And some people suggested maybe she was on drugs, possibly. But here's another answer. Let me put this up on the screen here. Where'd you go? This one? No, it's this last. Here's the last image. So here's what this says. So somebody found this and they posted it. It says it's from AI an answer, and it says when someone is burning, what do you do or something, or why do they stand still? And it says when someone is burning, they might not move because the intense pain from the burn can cause them to freeze or become immobile, often due to damage done to nerve endings in the affected area, which can lead to a shock response that inhibits movement. Additionally, deep burns can damage muscle tissue, further limiting mobility. So it's very possible that the fire that engulfed her very quickly basically took over her body, and she's now standing there, would like to move, but physically cannot. So this is another reason why, hey, we need to step in. So what do you do? Like, because maybe others didn't get the message. Now, when I was growing up, stop, drop, and roll, we learned these things. Stop, drop, and roll. We learned about taking your coat and putting it, not fanning them, but putting it over the person to smother the fire. Fire needs oxygen. If it doesn't have oxygen, it goes out. End of story. That's why they want you to stop, drop, and roll. You stop because if you start running around, you are fanning the flames, just like the man did. When you fan the flames, they get bigger. You're basically becoming a billow, a self billow. And so the idea being you stop so you don't create any additional wind, you drop on the ground and you roll around. The rolling is to smother the fire, to take the oxygen away from the fire so that it goes out. But if you're consumed in a fire, chances are you cannot move. So therefore, you would be reliant on somebody else to grab you, toss you on the ground, and roll you around. And it's possible that maybe some people just didn't know that. So let me play this video here. It's video 2. So let's play video 2 real quick. Here's how it works. And just so you know that I'm not making it up.
If at any point your clothing catches on fire, follow the stop, drop, and roll procedure. Stop exactly where you are. Drop to the ground. Cover your face with your hands and roll around to smother the flames. If someone else's clothes catch on fire, yell to them to stop, drop, and roll, and then use a rug, blanket, or towel to help smother and extinguish the flames.
Videos like that, you can find a bunch of them on YouTube. That was one of the first ones I found. I found some of them that were in different languages. And, with kids showing you. There are some with firefighters, right? You should be prepared for these kind of things. Because while we want to talk and say, oh, it was the illegal immigrant that did it. Okay, great. Fine. Put that aside. People can catch fire for other reasons. And if they do, could kind of be useful if you were useful and not a scared, whiny little whatever who won't intervene because of whatever excuse that you can come up with. I'm trying not to get too overly passionate. I know I do that sometimes, but I find this it's somewhere between sad and infuriating. It's absolutely horrible. I just cannot wrap my head around nobody wanting to help. And whoever that officer is, fire him. Fire him. He should have absolutely known. If you're an officer, you should have some limited medical training, right? Maybe stop some bleeding, put the pressure on it, little CPR, how to put out somebody who's on fire. Like, I don't expect you to be able to deal with, a serious wound necessarily, but you should be able to do some basic assistance to somebody. Otherwise, what good are you? Shooting dogs? Is that all the officer are good for? Fine, remove them from the subway and let a bunch of Daniel Pennies roam the subways. Let a bunch of Kyle Rittenhouses in there, because at least they'll protect people. And if they don't get this under control, just wait. They will find some vigilantes, and the vigilantes, unlike the movies, will not get it right. They will get some things wrong, and people aren't going to like it. So New York, you better do something. Hopefully this is a wake-up call to say, number one, our subways are out of control. If you have to bring in the National Guard, people on fire or not, you have a huge problem. If you've got people that don't want to intervene because they're too afraid of the legal process, or that's the excuse that they're making, you have a problem. If you have officers that just kind of casually walk by as somebody's burning and they don't offer any assistance, that officer had a coat. I saw it. He could have easily taken his coat off, wrapped it around the woman to try to put it out. Would he have caught fire? He might have. It's possible. I'm not suggesting that that if you go and you try to help somebody, you won't get injured in the process. What I am telling you is that you should be willing to get, you should want your fellow man to potentially be injured in the process of helping you out. Let me say that a different way. You should want your fellow man or woman to be willing to risk injury to help you out. And if we're not there as a society, we have a problem. We don't really have a great society. And I'll say it. We have a crappy society with people are just going to sit there and watch via cell phone, and videotape it so they can upload it and be like, oh, look at me. I got this video. Oh, great. You let somebody burn. Very active state. You let them burn. You are a terrible human being. Period. All right. Let's get to some comments. Let's see what we got here. I got the Merry Christmas out the way, so that'll be good. Let's see. That Liberty lady says, yeah, Hochul is going nowhere. She will use this for more regulation. Probably. And if I were giving all of you New Yorkers advice, I would tell them to reject that with a fury. You don't need regulations. In fact, regulations may be part of your problem. Conversation for another day. Yes, early on. That Liberty lady says, No one remembers stop, drop, and roll. You know why they probably don't know stop, drop, and roll? Because they're too damn worried about whose pronouns are what, right? Like we're worried about, oh, did you make the brown person feel good or feel bad by the way that you talk to them? Did you use a microaggression? Did you ask them their pronoun? Uh-oh, you used the wrong pronoun. Maybe you better apologize and flagellate yourself. No, like these like kids got those lessons down, but they don't seem to know what do you do if somebody catches on fire? Because I don't know, catching on fire, wrong pronoun. I guess maybe I'm the one that's got my priorities wrong. If we want to teach kids in school something, why don't you teach them to be good citizens and be prepared to help other people in a time of need? That could be useful. The time of need is not you needing your proper pronoun, not you needing to worry about whether a man was man spreading on the subway, whether some guy, talked down to you, whether you got whistled at, whether somebody told a sexist joke. Like, yeah, we can have a conversation, I guess, maybe squeeze that in after the fact. But how about we focus on actual physical help? Hey, if somebody's on fire, here's what you do. If you're too afraid to do this, which I get it, not everybody's going to be running toward burning flames. I get it. But you should be running somewhere to get some help. You should be screaming, help, help at the top of your lungs. Because if you won't, which I get it, if you won't, maybe somebody else will. Not everybody is going to be a superhero per se, but everybody should be a participant in helping their fellow man. That much we can ask of you. And if you won't, you're a terrible human being. And I hope you rot in hell. Not very nice of me, but it is what it is. Let's see here. Joe Hanu says, I mean, would you want to live after this? How about this? How about if people had responded more quickly? She may not have been burnt so badly, and she might and she might have recovered and been able to live a relatively healthy long life. Many people do. We've seen people with burn scars on their face and their neck and their legs. Like I think I had a cousin who had burn marks on her thighs because like some coffee spilled, like a hot pot, like fell off the counter or something and splashed or something like that. I don't remember the exact story. But a lot of people get burned and they go on to live happy lives. However, what kind of life is it to sit there and burn and not be able to move and to see people also unwilling to move and do anything? What a terrible way to go out, to know that nobody wants to help you. On top of the fact that you're burning to death, which supposedly is the worst sensation that a human can feel. So sad. Let's see. Yes. Can I remind everyone of my holiday streaming schedule? Yes, I can. Today is Christmas Eve. Let's try to end this on a little bit lighter note here. It's Christmas Eve. Enjoy time with your family. Enjoy time with your friends. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas Eve. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. I hope you get great presents. I hope the presents that you got other people are well received. I hope you enjoy all the food that you're going to eat. Try not to eat too much, right? I mean, we know that's going to happen, but maybe you give it a shot. Right? Enjoy that time. But also remember that not all of your fellow Americans are having a great Christmas. So start thinking, what can I do? What can I do to help my fellow Americans? And while you are thinking about all that, you can think about how you don't have to worry about the Liberty Dad podcast too much. I will be doing a show Friday. I have not yet got confirmation from my guest, but I will do a show Friday one way or another. We'll just put it that way. So I'll either do a dad talk with a dad, or I'll just do my regular dad talk, where we we talk about something dad related. So one way or another, Friday, I will do a dad talk, just to kind of like my last show of the year, be episode 431. I wish there was a more significant number to be given, but that's the way it is. So episode 431, Friday morning, I'll do the show. So I'm not going to do a show tomorrow. I'm not going to do a show Thursday. Then next week, I will be gone the whole entire week. I will not come back until the 6th. And then on the 6th, hopefully we'll have some new stuff for you to see. And we'll talk about, well, we'll talk about politics and culture, as we always do. All right. Let's see here. Yes, maybe I'll do that. If I don't have a guest, maybe I'll do an Ask Me Anything. We'll see. But anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring, especially to do better for your fellow man. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Remember, that's going to start again on the 6th. So Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m., starting January 6th, we will resume our regular schedule. By the way, always looking for dads. Join me for Dad Talk. It's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. So if you know a dad or you are a dad, you've got something you want to talk about, or you know a dad that has something that he could talk about, reach out. Let's get him on the show. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer, my Rumble channel. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week and weekend. Let me try to say it all. Have a great week, a great Christmas, and a great weekend. But I guess I don't have to say weekend yet since I'm going to do a Friday show. But I will catch you next time, because for now, I'm out.